Have you ever felt like you're working non-stop, yet not really moving forward? Like no matter how hard you try to optimize your schedule, speed things up, or stay in control, your mind still feels tired, tangled, and sometimes empty? If you've ever felt that way, I invite you to pause. Take a deep breath, because maybe what you're missing isn't another time management app or a more aggressive productivity strategy, but a different way of living. Slower, quieter, but deeply powerful from within. The truth is, productivity doesn't come from cramming more into your day. It comes from removing what doesn't matter, not just from your desk, but from your mind. And Japanese minimalism has taught me something profound. Living simply isn't about giving things up, it's about making space for what truly matters. When you clear away the haze of unconscious busyness, you begin to see more clearly what's truly helping you grow and what's quietly draining you. The 7 habits you're about to explore aren't just tips for organizing or tools for working smarter. They're gentle reminders to live with intention, to show up fully for the small things that, done with presence each day, can lead to extraordinary transformation in both your effectiveness and your inner world. And I truly believe that if you're hearing these words right now, it's because you're searching for something deeper too. A way of living where you're not just getting things done, but actually feeling calm and grounded in the process. So let's begin together. 1. Continuous improvement in small daily actions. There's a Japanese philosophy that the more you reflect on it, the more you realize it's not just a management strategy, it's a way of living with quiet strength. It's called Kaizen, continuous improvement. At first glance, it may sound like something suited for factories or corporate systems. But in truth, Kaizen is something you can breathe into every step, every gesture, every quiet routine in your daily life. The Japanese believe that even the smallest, most incremental change done with full presence has the power to transform your entire life. Not with dramatic leaps, but with gentle, steady accumulation. 1% improvement each day, just 1%, but given time and patience, it becomes a force you never expected. Kaizen doesn't demand that you become your best self overnight. It doesn't ask for a revolution. Instead, it softly invites you to notice the small, repetitive things you do every day and ask one simple question: can I do this just a little bit better? One morning, you wake up late. The kitchen's a mess. Your mood is scattered. That's okay. You can still start by putting one mug back where it belongs, folding the dish towel neatly, or simply taking 3 conscious breaths before making your coffee. That's enough. There's no pressure to do more. Kaizen doesn't chase speed. It chooses steadiness. Because if you improve just 1% every day, you'll be twice as good in 72 days. That's not just math. It's a mindset that helps release you from the shame of being too slow. Kaizen is a gentle reminder. You don't have to change everything to start changing. You just need to begin and keep going. I once saw an elderly Japanese man at a train station, carefully folding his wet umbrella before stepping onto the train. Such a small act, yet I couldn't take my eyes off him. While others rushed past, he chose to show up for the world in a slightly better way, not with words, but through his attention to ordinary action. That too was Kaizen in motion. This philosophy also teaches us about patience. In a world obsessed with instant results, Kaizen whispers that real, lasting change is never the child of urgency. Just as dripping water can carve stone, small daily improvements can dismantle the biggest habits. You don't need to force results. You only need to fall in love with the process, tending to every detail, staying with the present moment. And perhaps the most beautiful part of Kaizen is how it deepens your sense of refinement. You become more thoughtful with yourself, with your work, with your space, and even with your relationships. You begin to notice that when you wash the dishes a bit slower, fold your clothes a bit more carefully, or simply tidy your desk before bed, your mind also becomes clearer, calmer, more aligned. The Japanese have a quiet but profound saying, if you can't tidy your mind, start by tidying your desk. Maybe today you'll only clear one corner. Maybe tomorrow you'll forget something again. But as long as you're still taking small steps toward better, you are still living Kaizen. Let every morning be an invitation. Let every repetitive action be a chance to plant another tiny seed of improvement. Because you don't have to be great to begin, but you do have to begin to become great. 2. Applying the 5S philosophy to space and work. Have you ever felt like your mind was cluttered just because your desk was a mess? Or walked into a room and instantly felt a sense of relief simply because everything was in its right place, clean and harmonious? The Japanese have long understood the deep connection between our physical space and our inner world, and they've distilled that wisdom into a quiet yet transformative philosophy known as 5S. Seiri, Seiton, Seiso, Seiketsu, Shitsuka. It sounds almost like a 5-line poem, but in reality, it's a framework that gently reorganizes your environment and your energy, beginning with removing what no longer serves, continuing with placing things in order, then maintaining cleanliness, setting clear standards, and finally, nurturing the discipline to sustain it over time. The goal isn't a picture-perfect space. It's to create a sanctuary, an external calm that nurtures an internal stillness. Because in the Japanese way of seeing the world, the space around you is a reflection of the silence within you. 5S is more than just tidying up or rearranging furniture. It's a daily practice of decision-making. What to keep, what to let go of, what truly deserves your attention. An empty desk helps you focus more easily. A computer free from constant notifications lets your mind breathe. A thoughtfully structured schedule helps you return to your own rhythm instead of chasing chaos. And more than anything, 5S becomes a quiet ritual of self-awareness. When you spend a few minutes each day observing your space, you're also cultivating the habit of observing yourself, noticing what feels outdated, what needs to be reordered, and where you might be ready to invite something new. There's something subtly spiritual in how the Japanese approach their surroundings. Cleaning isn't just physical labor, it's an act of renewal. Each time you wipe away dust, you're also clearing out stale thoughts. Each time you release something you no longer need, you're freeing yourself from an emotional weight you may not have realized you were carrying. If an object no longer serves the heart, it must go. And when your space becomes clearer, your mind naturally begins to soften too. A study once found that physical clutter can drain up to 20% of your brain's focus, simply because your attention is constantly being pulled in too many directions. But you don't need a massive overhaul to feel the shift. You can start with one corner, 5 quiet minutes at the end of the day to straighten your desk, 1 evening a week to delete outdated files, 1 still moment each morning to ask yourself what truly matters today. The magic of 5S is that the more structure you bring into your life, the more freedom you begin to feel. Because you're no longer trapped in the noise, you start to see what needs to be done. You hear your inner voice more clearly. You move through the day with a little more grace, a little more clarity. 5S isn't rigid discipline, it's a gentle framework that helps you live closer to your true rhythm. Like a Japanese garden, where each stone and blade of grass is placed with intention, not too much, not too little, just enough to nurture peace. In the end, 5S isn't a method, it's a mindset, a way of listening to your surroundings as a mirror, so you can also begin to listen more deeply to yourself. Because if you're brave enough to reorder the world outside you, you're already tender enough to heal what's unsettled within. 3. Finding a reason to wake up every morning through work. One morning, I woke up and felt empty. Everything around me was the same. The familiar alarm, the usual cup of coffee, an inbox full of tasks waiting to be done. But somewhere in that sea of routine, I couldn't remember why I needed to begin. Life kept moving, and I just stood still. Then I remembered a Japanese concept, a red thread quietly tying work and life together, linking the self to the world: Ikigai. Ikigai, which loosely translates to a reason for being, isn't something lofty or abstract. It can be as simple as what brings a quiet smile to your face each morning. Something small, yet enough to stir your heart. In Japanese culture, Ikigai isn't defined by money or prestige. It's often found in the gentle rhythms of ordinary life. A nurse easing a patient's fear. A potter crafting a cup that makes someone want to sip their tea a little more slowly. When you live through Ikigai, you're not just working, you're connecting, giving, and being fully present. In today's world, it's easy for work to become a list of soulless tasks. We drown in to-do lists and forget why we even started. But when we return to Ikigai, everything shifts. You're no longer completing tasks because you have to, but because they're tied to something larger than yourself. The Japanese have a beautiful belief. When work is not just labor, but an expression of the soul that is Ikigai. And the magic is, Ikigai can be found anywhere. You don't need to change your career or turn your life upside down. Sometimes, all it takes is changing your perspective. A report isn't just a file, it's quiet support for your entire team. A routine meeting can be a space where your listening becomes someone else's relief. A repetitive task might become your daily practice in patience, care, and devotion to your craft. This isn't just poetic, it's backed by real insight. Studies have shown that when people find meaning in what they do, they procrastinate less, feel less burnt out, and stay intrinsically motivated. There's no need to force yourself into productivity because the work itself becomes the reward. And through the lens of minimalism, Ikigai becomes even more vivid. When we clear away the clutter from our space, our schedule, our obligations, our purpose has room to breathe. Sometimes, it takes removing 100 things to truly see the one thing that matters. The Japanese live with a quiet knowing. Joy doesn't come from having it all, it comes from doing the one thing that makes your heart come alive. That's also how they view productivity, not as doing more, but doing what matters, with more soul. So if you ever wake up feeling unanchored, don't chase a grand mission. Just ask yourself, what today makes me want to get out of bed? Maybe it's a conversation you're looking forward to, an idea you're nurturing, or simply the stillness of sitting by the window before the world wakes. However small it is, if it gives you a reason to rise, that, in itself, is Ikigai. 4. Accepting imperfection and transience. Some days, nothing goes quite right. You look back at something you've worked on and see only the parts that didn't turn out perfectly. You catch your reflection in the mirror and notice a few new lines near your eyes. You scroll through social media, and everyone else seems so composed, so successful, so flawless. In those moments, it's easy to feel small, incomplete, not enough. But if you've ever sat inside a traditional Japanese tear room, where chipped ceramic bowls are still cradled with reverence, where afternoon sunlight warms a weathered wooden table worn smooth by time, you'll feel something shift. Perfection isn't the point. It never was. There is Wabi-sabi here, the quiet beauty of things imperfect and impermanent. Wabi-sabi doesn't hide the cracks. It honors them. A broken bowl may be repaired with gold not to disguise its damage, but to celebrate the path it's traveled. In this spirit, the Japanese don't measure life by flawlessness, but by the tenderness in each mark time has left behind. A flower about to wilt still holds its own kind of beauty. An unfinished painting can still stir your soul. A person in the messy middle of learning, awkward, vulnerable, sincere, is still wholly worthy of love. In work, if you wait until everything is perfect to begin, you might never begin at all. There's a quiet Japanese mindset that says, good enough is the beginning of better. Sometimes, you have to start when things are only 80% ready. Because perfection is an illusion, action is real. And within each unfinished step, there's something even more valuable: progress. Wabi-sabi frees you from the fear of failure. When mistakes are no longer something shameful, you feel safe enough to create. You start writing, even if your first sentence is clumsy. You start building an idea, even if the outcome is unclear. And it's in that delicate space between not quite done and not giving up where creativity finds its breath. This philosophy isn't just aesthetic, it's a way of living that softens you toward yourself. If every morning you wrote a line like, "Today, I accept my imperfection," you wouldn't just be journaling, you'd be choosing compassion, choosing gentleness over judgment. There's a Zen saying in Japan, in a world of constant change, only imperfection is everlasting. When you truly understand that, you stop demanding life to be polished all the time. You begin to cherish the unfinished moments, the uncertain days, the parts of you still mending. Because those are the parts that teach you how to be real, not to prove anything, but to show up fully for every fleeting, fragile moment. 5. Mindful eating for optimal energy. There's a simple question we rarely ask in the rush of modern life. Have you truly eaten with your full presence? Not just to fill your stomach. Not while scrolling on your phone, checking emails, or thinking about unfinished tasks. But eating like a quiet ritual that nourishes your body, your mind, and your spirit. In Japanese, there's a word for this. Shokuji, not just a meal, but a moment of reverence. A way of honoring each ingredient, each bite, each breath that allows you to be nurtured by nature itself. In a traditional Japanese meal, you'll often find a quiet harmony. One bowl of rice, a simple soup, 3 modest side dishes, and a few slices of pickled vegetables. Nothing extravagant. Nothing wasted. Yet somehow, it feels deeply complete. They call this Ichiju Sansai, a way of eating that balances nourishment and simplicity, physical need and spiritual calm. And through this balance, the body feels cared for, not overloaded. The mind stays steady, and energy flows throughout the day, not in bursts and crashes, but like a quiet, steady stream. In Okinawa, where people live longer than almost anywhere else in the world, there's a practice that speaks volumes. Eat until you're 80% full. It's called harahachibu, not eating to satisfy every craving, but to maintain lightness. Because when the body feels too heavy, the mind gets sluggish. And when digestion becomes overworked, clarity fades. Eating less, but with intention and care, is how the Japanese sustain mental alertness, not through caffeine spikes or sugar highs, but through a stable, respectful relationship with food. In truth, eating is also a lesson in restraint. Not extreme restriction, but knowing when to pause. Like how they begin each meal with the phrase, "itadakimasu," which means, "I humbly receive." A moment to remember that food is never something to take for granted. And they end with "gochisu-sama," a quiet thank you to everyone and everything that made the meal possible. When you eat with awareness, something beautiful happens. You begin to rediscover what was once forgotten, the gentle sweetness of vegetables, the texture of warm rice, the subtle scent of freshly brewed tea. More importantly, you begin to rediscover yourself, right here, right now, present in the smallest details. No longer pulled by unanswered emails or looming deadlines. Just you and the meal before you, a soft pause in the middle of life's noise. The Japanese believe, when the mind is present with each bite, life itself becomes clearer. That's not a nutritional strategy, it's a way of being. Because energy doesn't just come from calories. It comes from attention, and when that attention is cultivated daily, it becomes a quiet reservoir of strength sustaining you through long days. Not by pushing harder, but by being more present. 6. Being prepared for everything. There's a very Japanese secret, so simple that it's often overlooked, yet powerful enough to transform the entire rhythm of your life. Always be ready before you begin. In Japanese cuisine, preparation isn't just a technical step, it's a quiet ritual. Before cooking starts, every ingredient is measured, prepped, and placed exactly where it belongs. The knives are sharpened, the hands are washed, and the mind is stilled. They call it junbi to prepare, and seri to sort. Not just to cook faster, but to make every movement intentional. Just like in a traditional kitchen, where every sliver of ginger, every sprig of scallion, every drop of soy sauce has its place, life, too, flows more smoothly when things are already in order. The Japanese understand that 1 minute of good preparation can save 30 minutes of confusion. It's not that they resist the unexpected, it's that they honor what happens when you show up fully, already steady and clear. And in order to be fully present when you begin, you need a space and a mind that's not being pulled backward by unfinished chores, misplaced tools, or mental clutter. In the middle of a workday, you often lose time not because the task is difficult, but because you don't know where to start. Your desk is still messy, your priorities undefined, and your thoughts scattered across 10 unfinished threads. That's not just disorganization, it's a subtle drain of energy. And the Japanese choose to seal those tiny leaks with a gentle practice. 5 quiet minutes in the morning to review your day, take a deep breath, and simply tell yourself, today, I will begin here. Preparation isn't an afterthought. It's the necessary prelude that makes everything else flow with more ease. And in the spirit of minimalism, preparation becomes even more meaningful. You don't prepare for everything. You prepare only what matters. A go bag with essentials always ready. A task list that's been trimmed down. An evening routine where you quietly lay out your clothes for tomorrow. Not to control everything, but to avoid being surprised by things that never needed to go wrong in the first place. There's a small philosophy the Japanese live by each day. External order is the foundation of internal clarity. When you no longer waste time searching for what's missing, you create space to think, to move, to imagine. When you've already prepared, you step into your work with a quiet confidence, not loud, but deeply grounded. And from that place, your productivity rises not because you're pushing harder, but because you're flowing better. Preparation doesn't waste time, it gives you back lightness in the moments that truly count. And if you begin to see every act of preparation as something meaningful, you'll slowly turn your life from a series of rushed reactions into a steady, thoughtful, current, refined, intentional, and deeply human. Not to do more, but to live more fully with everything you choose to do. 7 clearly separating work from rest. There's a subtle yet vital boundary in modern life, the line between work and rest. When this boundary blurs, we often find ourselves caught in an in-between state, half working, half resting, but never fully present in either. And when there's no clear separation, productivity begins to erode under scattered focus, while rest becomes too shallow to truly restore. The Japanese are deeply intentional about creating boundaries not with rigidity, but through quiet, meaningful rituals. Like the Genkan, a simple shoe entryway that signals the shift from outside to inside, or changing into more relaxed clothes after work, not just for comfort, but to gently tell the mind, it's time to let go. These tiny acts, repeated with awareness, become signals for the brain to reset its state. In creative work especially, rest isn't a luxury, it's a catalyst. In Japan, there's a gentle practice called inamuri, brief moments of sleep, often taken in between small pauses throughout the day. It's not about escaping work, but about reviving presence. Because when the mind is allowed to breathe, it returns sharper. Just as the earth needs time to recover between seasons, the brain needs blank spaces free of tasks and input to awaken its creative strength. In small living spaces, the Japanese are especially skilled at separating the worlds of work and rest. A desk that folds away, a tablecloth that's tucked into a drawer, a quiet corner reserved for tea or meditation. It doesn't take a lot of space, just intention. And it's this gentle transition between states that makes work more efficient and rest more complete. But more important than objects are the rituals. A few minutes at the end of the day to review what you've accomplished. Close your notebook, shut down your computer, and whisper to yourself, I've done my best today. Or something as simple as washing your face, changing your shirt, lighting a stick of incense, tiny acts that quietly mark the shift. Not to perform, but to remind yourself, now I can soften. We separate to reconnect more deeply. It's a Japanese truth, quiet, tender, and resonant. Because in a world where boundaries are constantly being erased, choosing to gently draw your own line between work and rest is a way of protecting your energy. It's an act of awareness. And it's also a quiet reminder that being productive isn't about doing more, it's about knowing when to stop, so that tomorrow you can begin again with a truly refreshed mind. If this video gave you a moment to pause and reflect, I invite you to share your experience in the comments below. Write, I choose to live mindfully, as a gentle commitment to yourself, and let us know which of these 7 Japanese habits is quietly reshaping your life. Thank you for being here, for your attention, your open heart, and your willingness to explore a different way of living. Remember, change doesn't begin with urgency. It begins with a small action, a quiet choice, a moment where you reconnect with yourself, fully and honestly. If today, all you do is fold your desk away after work, or sit down for one peaceful meal in silence, you've already taken your first step. And we'll keep walking together on this path of minimalism, depth, and quiet healing. See you in the next video.